Alright, another draft physics presentation. Yeah, it's a Ken Wheeler video. Yeah, I should give up, which I probably will soon, or maybe one of these days. Um, just getting a response. There's just no response. So there's no way to get an interaction out of him or some explanation. So I can only beg one of his devotees, one of these people who think he has the right answer. He's talking some sort of rational description of reality, that they'd be willing to interact in a live room where I could just ask a few questions about why you have such confidence that this pile of gibberish they just keeps repeating has something to do with physics or reality. I'd just like to probe you people to find out what this religion is. You think that people in Plato's time had some great insight into how the universe works that we somehow all forgot, or we just didn't pay any attention. What are you people thinking? Because I just don't get it. There's just no evidence presented defending any of this rubbish, and it's completely inconsistent with everything we do know. And more disgustingly, he's professing to explain something that science doesn't explain, and yet he's not explaining it. He's not explaining the simplest properties of magnets, or explaining why the experiments that even he shows aren't even consistent with the crap he says. So we'll play a little bit of his crap, and then we'll just read some of the crappy comments, and I don't know what, there's nothing else can be done. I mean, no one wishes to defend this crap. They just want to sit there and applaud and say, oh, that's just, yes, I so get it. What are you getting? Because I'm not getting it. I can't find anything to get. So apparently a magnet is doing this whatever this is, this spirograph kind of thing. And I'll just point out again, there's no evidence that magnets have any moving parts, that there's any moving ether or moving fields, because you can take very, very discrete, very small little stuff and put it around the magnet and you can't get it to move at all. It just won't. Magnets aren't perpetually moving something, because if they did perpetually move something, we could detect it. And that's just sort of true. And even when you think light is being bent in the ferrocell, you sort of have to understand that if it's a moving field, that there would be some sort of indication of movement in photons. But you don't really even, you don't even probe this enough to even realize that the ferrocell is a little more complicated than taking a photograph of a magnetic field. That's not exactly what it's doing. They're little tiny particles, and you're shooting light at them, and they're diffracting the light, and then the glass is reflecting the light back and forth. That's why it's holographic in its appearance. That's why it changes as you change the angle. It's because the internal reflections change as you change the angle. It's not. I mean, you can sort of tell this because, like, there's one guy who takes ferrocell, or whatever he calls them, ferro photos, and they're still three-dimensional. So you still kind of understand that, there's nothing happening when the magnet's there. So the magnet's not there anymore. It's just the position of the little bits, and they're just diffracting the light. It's should be sort of a giveaway that you can freeze the position and it is exactly the same image. Well, it doesn't work on you people. So he has two videos here. Has one on magnetism.
Holographic self-similarity follows in the magnetic model,
but what
magnetism is most definitely what people do not understand. As was said long ago by Faraday, magnetism is the dielectric field. Dielectricity is the inertia.
Right, dielectricity is the inertia. I mean, this is just words. There's just absolutely nothing to make. What are you talking about? What is an inertia? Draw me a picture of inertia. Could you draw a picture of something besides spirograph images? This doesn't exactly explain why I take two magnets and they repel in one position and they attract in another position. This doesn't explain any of that.
The loss of that inertia manifests itself in a geometric form pattern, but that form pattern...
Yeah, it's okay. So it manifests itself in a form pattern. Well, okay, sure. We would imagine that anything that manifests itself in a pattern. It's pretty hard to avoid manifesting in patterns. Everything you do sort of has, falling down has a pattern to it. You know, your knees hit first, and then your elbow, and you know.
Is not three-dimensional. It is resultantly and demonstrably so three-dimensional in the...
It's not three-dimensional, but it's demonstrably so three-dimensional in the... I mean, this is language that you people think this is saying something reasonable. This is what smart people do with their brain.
It has volume, but magnetism itself is two-dimensional. It is only resultantly three-dimensional and contains and creates volume. It is not voluminous, but it
has volume, but it's not voluminous, and it's only two-dimensional. But when you do a lot of two dimensions, it adds up to three dimensions. And, oh yeah, well, we all know that too, don't we? Yeah.
Is by definition that which creates volume by nature of the mass which it must transverse. Here,
so mass is transversed. Okay, this is somehow, what does that even mean? Mass is transversed. What even is mass in Ken Wheeler's notion of mass? What does it even mean when he doesn't think there's atoms and electrons and protons, and there's just thick ether and thin ether? What is this?
here we can actually see the hypertoroidal pattern that you actually find underneath the ferrocell.
Yes, you find in a device that's obviously more complex than the magnet you're looking at, and so yes, it creates patterns. But again, you sort of have to think about what's happening. There's two pieces of glass and a thin layer of fluid, and the fluid has little tiny bits in it that are magnetic, and then you shine light, you know, perpendicular to that plane, and it reflects and refracts and does all that kind of stuff and creates a pattern. Well, the pattern's just revealing how the little bits are lining up to some extent. But as you can see in the pattern, they'll never be moving, they'll never do anything. So how can you have a pattern created by a mechanism that creates movement, and yet you really think the little bits don't have to move? If they're in a moving field, the ether is moving, then the little bits of ferro material have to move.
As evidenced here from one of my videos, and here, as you can see 1,000 times over, the quote-unquote spirograph-like
yes, a spirograph-like pattern, but again, a pattern that is created by, again, a more complex circumstance you're viewing it through. You're not viewing it through some plain piece of glass or a lens that just sits there and makes it something smaller, bigger. And you know how much distortion you get even with lenses. You know, if you cheat the lens just a little bit, get a little off kilter, do a little light problem, you get all kinds of patterns and reflections. I'm seeing the lights on the ceiling really clearly. I'm not seeing the desk at all. I'm not seeing my hand, my fingers well at all, but I see certain things really well. So, you know, it's a little bit complicated just to sit there and say, oh yeah, I'm looking at magnetism. You're really not. You're looking at what magnets do to little bits of magnetic material in an oil. That's what you're looking at. Between two pieces of glass that are internally reflecting the light.
Spirograph-like pattern that forms the construct. What these are constructive and destructive interferences, is commonly found.
Right, so there's interference, but there isn't anything inside the magnet that could, you know, as you're rationally thinking about it, you'd be detecting the interferences would have to do something. There have to be indications of this movement, this frequency. You can't really have interferences without waves at different phases.
In the double slit experiment, but Unfortunately, modern science, being the bullshit that it is, it thinks that light is both particle and wave, but
Well, it's not even accurate. So again, just more blah blah. Let's premise an argument with just a false accusation that the scientists actually believe in duality, when generally speaking they only believe in it in a superficial way, in the sense that they, like Feynman would say, he believes that the fundamental nature of light is a particle, a corpuscle, and that there is an actual randomness in the universe that creates the phenomenon. And others would say that the light itself is fundamentally a wave, and that's why you have the wave interference. But I mean, it's just too superficial an argument that he's arguing against.
it is neither particle nor is it a wave. A wave is not a thing, rather what something does.
Right, and you can say that forever and ever, but what's the point of saying it if you're not going to talk about what you think is waving? So again, he thinks a photon isn't something shot as a frequency. He thinks it's a wave moving through a medium, and yet the wave doesn't spread like most waves do. The wave doesn't get tired. It goes billions of light years without being diminished any. Completely inconsistent with any wave medium. So all the wave mediums we know, ocean waves and all these other things, vibrations through metal, any other kind of wave or sound even in the atmosphere, we know they aren't durable. We know they spread, they do these certain things because the medium itself has the tension, and the medium absorbs the energy. It makes you pay for creating the wave. The wave isn't for free. And so that's all the waves we know of in the real world, and yet you're just going to use a word and say it's just like a wave, or it's just this, it's just that, when you're talking about a medium that's completely different than any medium known in human experience. And yet you're never going to mention the medium in your conversation about, well, there's no such thing as a wave. Well, clearly we have the word wave to describe a phenomenon, okay? So it's like saying there's no such thing as falling down. Because falling down doesn't happen from nothing. A something has to fall down. So therefore we can't say falling down is a real concept. I mean, it's just stupid. It's evasions. It's just, garbage conversation. What does this have to do with why magnets attract and why they repel? The fundamental thing magnets do is transfer force to each other. Where's he explaining how that force is transferred?
And certainly so. There's no such thing as a photon. That is misunderstanding the coaxial nature of light, which
again, this coaxial nature of light, you can just like spew out a word like that and some implication that there's a center and then a bunch of wire around it, so it has a core and then a shield, and that somehow light travels like a coaxial cable. What does that even mean? It goes through the center like electricity and then comes back through the shielding? What does that even mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's incomprehensible gibberish. I mean, why don't you just make up some kind of fairy tale notion, like a talking bear or a pig that makes houses? Why don't you just make it up out of something, at least fairy tale it somehow? You have Keebler elves that make the coaxial cable.
longitudinal pulse perturbation with resultant transverse electrical magnetic components.
Yeah, whatever that even means. Transverse electric and magnetic components. So he's just using their rubbish, right? That's their rubbish. This stupid electromagnetic nature of photons that doesn't really exist in any way we could ever observe. I mean, go ahead and try to bend a photon with magnetism. It ain't gonna happen. I mean, maybe he believes he's bending light. He's actually bending photons with his ferrocell. And maybe you people are foolish enough to fall for that. And you don't really think it's just light being reflected in these patterns. I mean, yeah, maybe they all fall for that. Maybe you're that gullible. That's stupid.
Necessitatively so, resultant to its propagation, but the propagation is in the field itself. Nothing is propagating in the sense of an object.
Right, so let's get to this field. Okay, so can you describe any of the properties of this field that you say exists? So we have this field of ether. Fine, let's get rid of electric fields and magnetic fields because that's all crap. So you just have one big field of ether. And ether has this special property where it can make a wave that just goes in a straight line. You know, just waves in a very straight little packet of waviness. Okay, so explain how this pattern somehow makes magnets attract and repel. And explain why, if there was doing all this moving, if these are actually bits of ether, you know, the ether is strung and it's rotating, the ether is moving. Well, why don't you explain how that ether can move and yet it doesn't move any material thing known to mankind? I can't even make it move an electron. I have to move the magnet to move electrons. I can't just sit the magnet there and say, move some electrons, because it won't happen.
Object moving from point A to point B, but these are constructive and destructive interferences of the resultant divergent centrifugal magnetism interacting with the increasing inertia and acceleration of the centrifugal. But this
So again, interacting says magnets have multiple parts. They are centrifugaling and then they're interacting with some other inertia volume-y thingy in the counter space. Well, what is that crap? I mean, it's just gibberish, just crap.
centrifugal is not magnetism per se, not specific.
Oh yeah, well, okay, so forget the centrifugal. It's really the perturbation of the latitude fatitude. It is and now it's not. It is magnetism. Well, except it's not.
Denotatively, but we can say that it is so superficially so. This is the confusion of the misunderstanding by everybody in the world as to the conjugate.
Well, then why don't you explain it, okay? If everybody's misunderstanding it, why don't you fucking explain it in some sort of English language? It doesn't even have to be really good English. It could be like broken French or something, or maybe some broken Spanish. But in some sort of reasonable vocabulary, we'll use actual words like go and fast and up and down and left and right, you know, regular words where you explain how this fucking thing works. What, do people actually have to just beg you, please, 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 could you just please explain it without using these fucking jargon words?
Nature and the relationship of magnetism to dielectricity. We can't say that the
Yes, magnetism to dielectricity. So he's explained neither one of those things in any kind of rational terms where you could actually draw even any kind of dimensional picture of it, any kind of notion of what the hell you're talking about. This is supposed to be physics and it has no physics. It doesn't have any shape, it doesn't have any form, it doesn't have any function, it doesn't do anything over any time period, it doesn't have, it's just amorphous gibberish. Life is a spirograph. That sounds like crap people tell 6-year-old kids. That doesn't sound like the jargon of somebody trying to explain something they understand. That sounds like the bullshit of people who don't know answers, and so they just throw a funny picture in front of somebody. Somebody asks a serious question, a kid asks a serious question, and they just go, look at this, look at the pattern. Spirograph, fun. Don't ask me any serious questions, like how it works.
head side of a coin is something completely different than the tail side of the coin. Obviously they both entail the coin, or actually specifically would be the case the head and the tail would be the magnetism, but the silver of which the coin is made would be the dielectricity.
Alright, so the head and the tail are the magnetism and the silver is the dielectricity, and that analogy works for you people. That somehow explains, okay, so magnetism is like sides, and dielectricity though is like, without that you can't have sides. So dielectricity is the real thing, and dielectricity is what? It's like moving electrons, because that's usual. Electricity is usually defined by moving electrons. Well, if you don't have to move any electrons, that doesn't. How do I make electricity out of that? Or dielectricity, whatever that is. Unelectricity, anti-electricity.
You certainly do not have the magnetism without the dielectricity, or the dielectric silver, as if we were in that analogy. Let's take a look at the simple toroid. We'll actually see here a two-dimensional model. Here we have a three-dimensional representation. This conjugate geometry, if we
okay, so conjugate geometry, and these are all little arrows on here, so this thing is moving. Again, this is moving ether. So a magnet is supposed to be constantly moving ether bits, or ether strings, or ether whatever, but it's moving. So when the magnet's just sitting there moving, why can't I put anything on it that demonstrates that it's got all this fluid, all this turning, all this, it's doing all of this action? Why can't I find the action? Why can't I test for the action if there's so much frickin' action?
actually take the inverse of the toroid, we have the iris.
Let's understand, the only thing you can find magnets doing is the fact that they're sending force bits radially, and at the same law as the inverse square law, that is, they separate at the same rate as light does, and that they affect an object by hitting it with those rays of magnetism. There's no evidence of fields doing anything, it's rays doing something. That's what all the tests indicate.
Hourglass pattern of the hyperboloid, which forms the conjugate nature with the toroidal, the creation of space and volume.
It's probably enough, right? He's just going to do this through the whole video. Toroidal propagation, the same images over and over again, same, just, it won't improve, trust me. We'll jump ahead here. You'll see it's going to be the same jargon. It's just
to a larger and larger and larger and larger and larger circle. So that would actually be, according to the geometry of the nature of magnetism, the way in which I would, quote, draw the loss of inertia would be an increasing circle instead of a point moving out and then moving back again, kind of like a comet going around the sun. It would just be an increasing circle and then a decreasing one. Upon termination, nothing is emitted by the loss of that inertia. So
again, nothing's emitted by the loss of inertia, yet we know magnets create force. They're emitting something. You know, something went in and something got changed, or it's creating something. I think the logical answer is something's going in and it's changed by the magnet, and it goes out different than when it went in. The magnet's just filtering force. Be the logical solution to the problem, as I pointed out. But again, there's no explanation in any of this stuff. So he's just going to keep saying the same frickin' hyperboloid, volume, dielectric volume.
True power is rest, not manifestation of power. One might think.
Not manifestation of power. What does this even mean? Power unmanifested. What?
Ignorantly, as any human being would, that power would be an atomic bomb going off, for example. Well, that's true power. The true power, one might think. But obviously, it's just the inverse of that.
So it's no power in an atomic bomb. That's the lack of power. Apparently, so the power is in keeping everything in whatever, and when it gets that, it turns into a nuclear bomb or something. Okay. Then you still have to explain where all the power is, and why the power somehow is so. I mean, we already know what an atomic bomb is. Again, so he's debating the reality that the little bits inside the atoms are the things causing the chain reaction, and that somehow the chain reaction is matter getting less material or something, when it's sort of obvious that it's just breaking the complexity of the matter. The energy was always in everything, and the energy is released when you find a way to break its magnetic attachments. Anyway, so let's just go to some comments and then we'll leave this alone. Just a terrible waste. So he's got another one on Tesla, and I guess I won't bother, but it's just more of the same stuff, like somehow Tesla knew all these secrets. There's no evidence that Tesla knew anything. You go to the tesla.com, go whenever you want. His writings are just rambles. There's just nothing terribly coherent in anything. Even his patents are so ambiguous, and you know, that they can't mean anything. But in a sense, they're sort of evidence of something too, because he makes all these claims like we're going to, you know, transmit electricity. Well, okay, technically a radio wave's transmitting electricity, but it's the tiniest minuscule amount of it. What good is it? You can't power anything with it. Oh, it's just so silly. So anyway, what do you think of the Thunderbolts project? Some of the people involved with them seem to be a bit nutty, though I'm certainly not versed enough to write them off wholesale, but the overarching electric universe theory seems to be in line with what you described. I don't think Ken responded to this at all. So his little viewers did. Yeah, well, obviously some of their theories are just religious notions. That somehow this has something to do with human spirits and whatnot. All this mumbo jumbo. So I don't think there'll be a Ken response here anywhere. So yes, so they apparently have all now gotten into the idea that you know, Thornhill himself purports that the Earth and other planets are much younger than mainstream cosmology says. So I don't see anything here. Ken, I didn't choose to respond. This was great. The visuals really help with following the reasoning. Thank you. Now, where's the reasoning? Where do you see this reasoning? I mean, who are you people? Okay, this is like some French guy, so we'll see. I mean, it's all like, you know, some retarded school subsidizes Ken's videos or something. Alright, so I guess he has one subscriber and he doesn't have any videos. Yoga, okay, New Age, yoga. So I guess that's it. You know, everybody's just a religious kook. You know, even if they're not one of the conventional religions, they're just turning science into religion. So it's all the same shit. They're all looking for an answer that doesn't have anything to do with the truth. Ken, are you aware that Fractal Woman, she's a big fan and puts your explanations in a simple form, though through use of fractals. So again, just this trying to cram the universe into some, you know, something that people are attached to. So like if they have a Pomeranian, they're going to try to make the universe look like a Pomeranian. You know, it's just so obviously not how you do anything called science. Let's see. I'm an idiot. I can get a grasp on this. Is the rest of the population really that bad? Idiocracy. So this guy understands what Ken's talking about, and he understands now why magnets attract and why they repel, because it's a hyperboloid, and obviously that's what hyperboloids do. I don't know. And a new channel to sub to. Awesome, thanks, Jim. Oh, I guess that's Fractal Girl or whatever it is. So the Earth is flat, not a troll. Oh, that's obviously a troll. It would be funny if we lived in a second field and our brains made it feel 3D because of magnetism. That would be funny. Guess there's no accounting for what's called a sense of humor on this planet either. That comment is a little closer to reality than you think. Your heart generates a massive magnetic toroid. So again, they think it's a massively magnetic, the heart. Not happening, sorry, no. It is then sent up to 33 vertebrae and transduced by the brain into waveforms. Is this no hope? Symbolically, this is shown by the female. Oh, some female part is going to show this goddess. So yeah, again, just absolute rubbish. Where would be no up? There would be no up. I don't know what that even means. Then is there isn't. No, I won't bother reading the side chat. Don't think this is all happening on an oblique spinning rock sphere. I don't think this is all happening. Well, good for you. You know, because yeah, it doesn't sound like anything rational. Still rub my head, but a lack of understanding does not make it false. I await your next. Why await? It's going to be exactly the same videos over and over and over. There will never be an explanation of attraction and repulsion. The fundamental things magnets do will never be explained. The fact that they move electrons will never be explained. Whenever I plug in my guitar, instead of remembering words, I am imaging that what the electromagnetic induction would look like. Cheers. And how are you doing that with this model? Because I can't do it with this model. Hyperboloid does not give me any image. I imagine the current world flow from bottom to top. A guy called Jim Watkins, and he has a girl as an image. Okay. First, pizza scent. Smoke their little brains. Great vid as always. You know what they should do is they should, you know, YouTube could do so many things that would be a little bit informative, but they should actually have a little indicator of exactly how much of the video the asshole who's commented actually watched. Yeah. Did you get to check out that plasma vid? Who are these people? This is Invincinch. Yeah, I wish it didn't take too long. Alright, so guitar playing. Can stars be seen in space? And then a hamster on a pool table. Great. Silly people. I missed these, so Gerald Johnny wants more. The Masons got it right. The Masons got it right. It is all circles and squares, and there are many permutations. So, again, just somebody who wants to force the universe. I mean, I did that when I was a kid. I had this theory about the number 3, and you know, I was trying to make the whole universe 3. You know, because there was like, you know, there was sun, planet, moon, 3 things. And then you could find other things. 3 things, 3 things, 3 things, 3 things. No, that's not scientific. Alright, anyway. Do you know the German doctor Konstantin Merrill or whatever? His main subject is scalar waves. So at least, you know, that other lunatic, what's his name? The old cranky guy that's supposed to be the father of Tesla kinetics or whatever. Even he admits there's no scalar waves. But obviously the faculties won't accept any of these theories. Faculties? You and him both say the same. Yeah, okay. Which is nothing. Okay, so apparently there's some other German guy who's just talking complete shit too. Yes, just came back to correct my statement. The point was about scalar waves, since they are still denied by mainstream science. Well, they're also denied by Dullard. That's his name. Dullard says so. He's the big Tesla king. Alright. Globebusters featured your recent video about light on their show. Oh, amazing. It was a great way to get conversations started. Maybe you could clear some things up for them. Ooh, link please. 0. The first thing to clear up is that the Earth is round, so probably not going to work out. Oh, okay. Globe Busters is apparently the flat earthers. Thanks again, Ken. When you're ready, take us back deeper down the rabbit hole to the so-called Big Bang, the so-called beginning of time, with more relativity quantum destroying insights. So he's destroying them with this brilliant hyperboloid theory. And Ken, of course, has the truth about the beginning of time because he actually met God. He is God on Earth. You know, that's probably part of Ken's theory, is that he really is the poo of God. And he's here on Earth among us. The poo of God is here to explain the Lord's mission to hyperboloid us all. Hyperboloids for everyone. I thought the lines were emerging from one end, decelerating, and then re-entering the opposite direction, accelerating at both ends. Well, that's certainly in other videos. He certainly does say that goes in one end and out the other. The difference between north and south being clock or anti-clockwise. And still, this doesn't explain anything. The amount of attraction you get even in an ether, like even in thick tomato soup, I could spin things, and the amount of attraction, if they're spinning opposite, but you know, it will look like they're compatibly spinning. The amount of pressure is tiny. You know, you couldn't squeeze a cockroach to death. You couldn't crush anything. Magnets are incredibly powerful. You know, the repulsion especially. You won't get any kind of repulsive force like that by just spinning stuff in ether. It doesn't even come close to explaining magnetism. It doesn't explain why the magnet doesn't create any of that. I can put magnets, move them towards each other while you're looking at the field lines, and you won't see the field lines doing some incredible crashing and smashing and all that. You won't see any of that. Let's see, there's a reply. It's probably moronic. My thought on this after much study, oh please, paranoid android, and I'm not totally clear on what Ken would think, but it seems to me that magnets reveal the magnetic field to us due to their coherent atomic spin structure. The field is not being produced by the magnet or the atoms. It surrounds and envelopes the entire universe. Yeah, well, this is probably, yes, that's why it's ether, but somehow it's moving. Magnetism, electricity, dielectricity, etc. So again, they just throw these words out. What does any of those things mean? What is a magnetism? What is an electricity? What is a dielectricity? Are all there is. Well, why can't you explain any of them? If they're all that is, why can't you explain just one of them in some sort of rational verbs? Space and our reality is part of and produced from or within this fundamental thing that you can't even give a notion of a description of. Yay, magnetism. Love these videos. It makes my day, despite the fact that I don't understand most of it. Well, you know, at least you're honest about that part. But again, how could somebody say, this makes my day, yet I don't understand it? How does not understanding make your day? Just amazing. So you don't care. Just anything throwing a rock at this evil atheism of modern science. Oh, they say we don't have free will, and they say it's all this electronical stuff, and no. We've got to put magic in there somehow. That's what's making your day, right? Ken, check this out. I mentioned it in one of your live streams. It's interesting in light of this video. With some sort of flat thing. It says flat right there. Oh yeah, that's very interesting. Anyway, matter is potential energy. Well, it's full of something, that's right. To release matter as energy, yes, It is to create kinetic energy. Okay, you could say that if you want to. The stuff that the matter's made up of is still moving a little bits. Yes. So it loses, so the loss of potential energy, like draining a battery when you connect matter convert matter into energy. Yes, it's it's kind of simple in a way. You can think of it as just a bunch of moving stuff. It's free in the universe. It's full of energy, the ether, but it has to be a moving ether. All the little bits are still moving, and then all they do is matter is they get trapped. They get trapped in little boxes, so they don't move anymore because they're trapped in a box. That's how simple it all is. But keep clinging to your hyperboloids and whatever the other thing is. They're toroids and hyperboloids. So what is mass and dielectric in the dielectric field? So we have the dielectric field, which is the counter space, I think. What is this tree? What is this rock? And how was Edward, I don't know, Lichtenstein was probably able to do what he did at Coral Castle? Oh, some more people just, it all has to be magic. It can't just be a trick and you fell for it. No, you really can produce pigeons out of nothing. Pull them out of your sleeve. Anyway, sassafras, I don't know what that's for. You are awesome. Full extent of the world. Thank you, Ken. Love these videos. This is supposed to, oh, Jane Roberts. It's supposed to be a chick. Let's see if it is. I mean, this stuff is really, this sort of is for 16-year-old girls. Physics. It doesn't look so bad. But no real content. And so, all we have is the created playlist. Meditation. Okay, dreams, evolution, value, fulfillment. So, those are not words that should be shoved together. So, New Ager bullshit. Excellent. So again, a video that says nothing. Absolutely useless. I mean, really, so somebody says, he says Robert Wiggin. So if you were going to explain magnetism to a 10-year-old kid, this is, you think this is the way you would do it? I mean, maybe Ken ought to do some like sex education videos, and we could see how well he can do that. See how many insanely obtuse verbiage he can use for the simple process. Hey Ken, what are the magnetic properties of plutonium, or would it make a really good magnet? Or is that just you said? I think if we knew, if we made good magnets, we'd be making magnets out of almost anything. Because in certain applications it doesn't matter whether it's radioactive. Remembering me about the vortex and energy our hearts use. So again, more crazy, loop-de-doo, wacky crap that has nothing to do with reality. Now we have magnetic hearts. How did you download pattern doodles, Mac? Ken, what happens when you increase the amperes and decrease the voltage? Well, you'd have to increase the load, but anyway. Will the two wires accelerate towards each other? Depends on whether it's DC or AC. But yes, if you put enough amperage in, yes. The second plane where magnetism and dielectricity reverberate back and forth through it. Energy, frequency, vibration, as someone once said. Maybe I'm starting to glimpse the guy behind the curtain. No? Question mark. So again, what do you know about why magnets attract or why they repel? What have you learned about that from Ken Wheeler? I want some of that coffee you've been drinking. Yeah, I need something. Man, I'm just so depressed. People, there's just idiots everywhere. You're all so fucking stupid. There's nobody to talk to. Just nobody that can't learn anything from any of you fuckers ever. Where is your book? I will buy a copy. Yeah, but it gives it away for free. Go ahead. Go download it. You know, spend the money you would spend on the book for, you know, the proper medication. You know, so it's going to hurt your brain. I was just thinking of ceiling fan and how it would seem to slow and alternate spin. What if the hypertoroid pattern of spin is at the perfect rate, which would produce power of some sort? So another guy who thinks there's infinite energy. Woo! Tony has made a video addressed to you to reply to the 2x image quality debate. Oh, here we go. So at least he's arguing with somebody. So that's at least something. But I'm not going to get into a conversation about cameras and, you know, sensors on cameras. I mean, it's just no point, because every camera, they all have little tricks, you know, about speeding up how often they can update what the little sensor bits are receiving. And so having more sensor bits doesn't matter if the electricity has to go much slower to get across the sensor, because then you can't see the photons because your trace is too slow. But anyway, don't want to get into that. So anyway, enough of this crap. So let's just do a little bit of the Tesla one, just because he probably says something too silly in it also. Where's the Nikola okay, so Nikola Tesla, his view on failure of modern stuff. So there wasn't anything in this video. It didn't say anything. It didn't even have very many Tesla quotes in it that were relevant to any kind of scientific subject, beyond, you know, Tesla's kind of famous, not famous, but, you know, infamous, kind of relevant statement that, you know, the obvious in terms of Einstein's bent space. Now, even though Einstein never said bent space, or I think he might have said space-time, but I'm not sure. But anyway, he didn't use the jargon that everybody else created for the term for it. He just argued that this way of looking at it fit the evidence. I don't think he thought that nothing was happening. He clearly thought something was happening, so he wouldn't have said nothing is doing something. So he would imply that there had to be a something doing it. But whatever, it doesn't really matter. Einstein's answer was stupid, yes. But Tesla's answer is even stupider.
That applies to so many things, and all the sort of ignorance and stupidity that I see on a daily basis, and other people posting things. Let's hear a quote from Nikola Tesla. This is, of course, in regards to his science, his field of study, excuse me. Today...
Right, that's totally failed, right? I mean, Tesla really did believe that you could just shoot, you know, that you could first collect energy for free, but that the idea is that you could just propel electricity anywhere you wanted to and just put up an antenna and collect it. I mean, you know, it had no appreciation for the fact that energy, you know, unless you put it in a form like a laser beam and shoot it through completely empty space, that it really doesn't. Mediums get in its way. Anything gets in its way, and especially an atmosphere. And he couldn't figure out. He makes this giant tower, and he couldn't figure out that he's never going to be able to shoot his lightning anywhere except into the ground. I mean, fuck. I could have told them it wasn't going to work.
Scientists have substituted mathematics for experimentation. They wander off through equation after equation. And
okay, so let's understand that Tesla said exactly the opposite. Okay, in the sense that he said about Edison. Edison was an asshole because he didn't use enough math. He wasted his time doing experiments that he could have mathematically figured out couldn't happen. And then this hypocrite is saying this crap when he glorifies Steinmetz, who basically believed you could mathematically describe everything in the universe. I mean, that's what Steinmetz believed. It was almost his religion, that he could actually write a formula or an equation that would exactly define when you're going to blink your eyes. He thought everything was predictable in a mathematical form. And so this is the duplicity of this. You know, he's putting his religion into their mouths. He's playing with dead people. You know, he's digging them up and then putting the dead people on his hands and saying, "Oh yeah, I thought Cam Wheeler was really smart. Oh yeah, I thought so too." And they're not saying anything like that. They'd hate this guy's guts.
Eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality. Now, one of the fun...
Okay, so the fact that the mathematics doesn't describe the nuances of reality, I would agree, and that the formulas can be too vague, you know. They just don't give you enough information. They predict it's going to rain. They don't predict how much it's going to rain or how acid the rain's going to be or some other details. And all those details sometimes are really important about what the real outcome's going to be. But the idea that math that you can't use math to describe periodic events that happen routinely and over again, is just idiotic. It's really valuable for that purpose. It's good at identifying cycles.
Fundamental things that none of you people were ever taught in school is that there's observation and then there's explanation. Okay?
Right, so and that there's another word this guy shouldn't even be able to use because he explains nothing. There's absolutely no explanation of anything provided. There's just believe the hyperboloid makes magnets attract, and then the hyperboloid and the toroid makes them repel, or whatever the bullshit is. But there's no explanation of anything connected to anything real. Oh, I think in this video he starts talking about, again, love and faith. Show me a mathematical equation for love and faith and soul or something, and something else. So yeah, I should jump ahead and see if we can get to some of that funny stuff. Let's go here in the middle. I mean, the word faith, for example. Why would anybody ever want to make a mathematical formula for wrong way to do anything? Faith. I mean, it's a stupid thing. Faith is anti-intelligence. Belief without reason, belief without evidence. What are you endorsing? Why would there be a mathematical equation for error? I mean, making errors. Let's build a mathematical equation that makes errors. That's all faith is going to get you.
Einstein did not discover that. It was J.J. Thomson. If someone were to discover some sort of new property of fields, and it's like, I've repeated it, and I've got this output, it's like, hey, great, you know. Then they'll write a paper explaining it.
Yeah, well, nobody explains fields, including you. Okay, he says there's one field. He says there's a field. Everything's fields. So, but he doesn't explain the ether field in any detail. Doesn't give it any form or shape or identity or properties whatsoever.
Their correct observations and the repeatability of those observations have no connection at all to the explanation. You see, I could observe something happening. It's like, hey, it's a new discovery. And I write a paper about it.
Why don't you explain the old discoveries? I don't care about you observing some new one. Why don't you explain the old discoveries? But it doesn't matter because obviously he'll just pervert them into whatever he wants them to be, like the ferrocell, for example. He'll give you an explanation that won't be connected to reality. That he's actually bending light. The magnets are actually bending photons.
Space, waves, shadows, and what was the other one? Right, space waves, shadows, something else.
But they're just privations. So he's just putting everything in some sort of, like they're all in some sort of the same category, and they're clearly nothing to do with each other. You know, empty, nothing, space is one thing. Waves, yes, that's moving vibrations through a medium. You know, they all have their individual different properties.
Emptiness, space wave, shadows, emptiness.
I mean, shadows is kind of the most imbecilic of them all, how he talks about how a shadow isn't a thing. Well, of course it is a phenomenon. All these things are described as phenomena. So yes, there's a difference between being fully illuminated, that is, having a bunch of light hitting you and the light bouncing off, and no light hitting you and no light bouncing off. Those are two different states of being. It's insane to say one of those states doesn't exist. No, they're two different states. I mean, it's like having the light switch on and light switch off. They're different states.
None of these things are elementally viable. They are not things in and of themselves. You have to have a Pythagorean or a Platonic, a proto-Platonic.
Yeah, proto-fetal, zygote. Go all the way back to your zygote brain, and you might be able to understand some of this shit. But no, once you're hatched and you're here on Earth and you do a little bit of observation, again, would any of you people who think Ken's doing a marvelous job, would you actually let this guy talk to a 10-year-old? You don't think he's just going to do damage to their fucking brain with this bullshit?
Mindset. You don't have to have study. You just have to have your mind geared to think like a Platonist, to understand that these things are not things.
Right. Think like a 500 to 5,000-year-old man, a 4,000-year-old man. Yeah, that's the way to win. Forget all the stuff we know, and and try to imagine what you would make of phenomenon when you're completely ignorant. Ugh, amazing. So, let's see if we can get to some spiritual crap here.
So, is there any signal on this radio? No, there's no signal on this radio. Is that a denial of a signal?
So he's now almost implying that somehow there's not a signal that's transmitted through his ether. See, I don't even understand why he uses this approach. What, do you think there's some signal that reached the radio? Well, yeah, that's right. It travels the speed of light. We've measured it. So what are you arguing? That there wasn't something that moved either through a medium, or it actually, like bullets, got here at a certain speed because the little bullets were going a certain speed. But it's one of those two things. The signal is a pattern of change, and that change moved from one place to another place at the speed of light. Now, what the hell are you talking about, crazy person? I just don't know how people can reward him for this whatever this mush is. This pretending there's no radio signal that has to travel from point A to point B. Of course there is. You can block it because it's there, and you can put shields against it and stop it.
There's no soul in the body. That doesn't mean I'm denying the soul either.
Okay, so he's not denying the existence of the three bears, right? Because what evidence do we have that there's anything called a soul? Where's that? So that's as unevidenced as his magnetic theory. Why don't you write a book on the soul, Ken, and you can explain to us where we can find evidence of this soul thing. Oh, I probably should just stop there. As soon as somebody starts talking, just because there's no evidence of a soul doesn't mean I'm saying there isn't a soul. So yeah, go ahead, make up anything, and I'll say there's no evidence against it. So I'm not saying there's no evidence against it. That's as far as my brain can think. I mean, I can know you just made it up, but I'm too stupid to say I know you just made that up. So you don't have any evidence of that. So why should I believe in something for which there's zero evidence?
Does it? No. People, you see, if you were rich back in the day, like 16th, 15th, 14th century, if you were rich, word, you had the money.
Yeah, well, you have a ton of money, so, and what do you do with it? Just hoard cameras.
It's okay to mix the two for the sake of humor. To be adamant about stuff is like, no, you're wrong, and you're an idiot, because everybody's wrong. I don't know anything about car repair. There's tons and tons and tons of stuff.
Yeah, well, you don't know anything about magnets either, so again, it says, but clearly, somebody who's doing physics, or, the mechanics of the universe, I think even if Plato existed today, he'd probably know something about car repair. He'd probably know the basics of how the engine runs, and you'd understand it's lubricated, it gets hot, and then all the dynamics. So again, to say you don't know anything, that's kind of a silly thing to say, Ken.
I have no idea. It's like, I don't know about that. You know? It's important is to be a lover of wisdom and knowledge. Of course, it's also important to distinguish knowledge episteme from wisdom or gnosis.
Right, so that just has to do with, came out of a white guy's mouth, it's wisdom. If it comes out of somebody else's mouth, it's information, maybe. That's all it is. What kind of bullshit is this distinction between wisdom and knowledge? I mean, the only thing that tests wisdom is knowledge. You have to have enough information to have fully tested something to be sure it's ever right.
It's a different thing altogether to be a lover of ignorance. There's a lot of people out there like that.
Yes, lover of bullshit, which I think you are. Like I said, you're just playing a game with imbeciles. You know, somehow I don't know where you got the impression, but apparently you did. That yeah, I can fool these suckers, and they'll still like me because I'm I have a personality, and I can hook these people into thinking they're my friends or something, and I can get away with just complete bullshit and pretend that you're feeding them something that's real food, and you're just throwing rice cakes at these idiots. They're starving, and you're just giving them more symptoms of malnutrition. These type videos are why I'm subbed. Much love, Ken. Well, that's Tommy. Yeah, well, kind of a Tommy comment. Is common sense going extinct, Ken? Oh, common sense. Hyperburloids is common sense, right? The soul is common sense. Pi. Incomprehensibility. Whatever. Immensurability. Incomprehensibility. Okay, well, anyway. Dumb question. Alright, anyway, enough. You're just killing me. So, maybe the last Ken video. I mean, all you can do is say, insane coward. All this little, whatever they are, eat shitter followers, insane cowards. None of these people have the guts to defend any of this rubbish, this frickin' religion, this religion for idiots. I mean, they don't, the old religions were dumb, right? Because you're saying, how could people fall for this? Where did the Holy Ghost come from? Where did Cain's wife come from? I'd say simple questions. No answers. It all doesn't make any sense. And especially Old Testament crap. You find millions of plot flaws in this stupid thing. But they're just jumping to anything. Give me any kind of feeble, silly, bullshit pile of crap as the truth. And they all feel they're special. Oh, I've outdone all those stupid scientists with my hyperburloid knowledge. I got the real truth. Magnets have souls full of hyperburloidia. Ugh, fucking putrid, stupid fucking idiots. Alright, anyway, no. Disgusting. Cowards. Fucking cowards. Hit the button. Dumb as shit. Probably won't be the last Ken video. But anyway, it's just so bad. Yeah, I mean, there's just got to be a way to provoke a challenge. It's got to be one of these people have to have nuts they wish to defend. One of these, whatever, fucking brainless, ballless wimps, simps.